And lecture 5, we will be finishing off with the general code of conduct, discussing various other codes of conduct and the role of the Ombud. When you look at direct marketing happens when you furnish a client with information by way of telephone. So you phone the client and you offer them the product. So when you do this, you need the business name and telephone number of the direct marketer as well as the compliance department. You have to state if that direct marketer is a licensed FSP and what products they are licensed to offer. And also if they hold any professional indemnity insurance. All this needs to be made clear to the client over the phone. So when a direct marketer is advertising to the client, they must as soon as possible establish if that product is appropriate, looking at the client's risk, financial needs and circumstances. So when they're on the phone to the client, they need to give the following information: the business name, the financial product, the obligations of the client, cooling off rights, investment risks, etc. You can go through the list over there. They must also, very importantly, take steps to establish if the product is a replacement or if it is a new product, because the financial implications and the consequences are different for each. So the direct marketer has to give the client the following information. It needs to be given orally and then confirmed in writing within 30 days. So you can go through the information over there. For example, how benefits are paid, what commission or fees is paid, are there any minimum benefits, and the client may also request the recording of the telephone discussion. So the direct marketer must also give a written record of the advice. So they record all the telephone conversations, and they need to have a way to store these telephone conversations if the client requests or even if the registrar requests. When you talk about complaints are submitted in writing and they need to be promptly responded to and investigated. They must be handled timely and in a fair manner. And the FSP must also keep a record of these complaints for at least 5 years. If the complaint isn't resolved to the client's satisfaction, the client needs to know what further steps can be taken. Are there appeal procedures available to him? So you need to make sure that when the client complains, are they satisfied? Okay, and there must also be an internal complaints resolution policy. So the assistance must be designed to ensure the following things: that there's adequate manpower and resources dedicated to complaints. The staff are trained and they know the legislation, they know how to deal with complaints. Responsibilities can be delegated to a specific complaints department that does this all the time, so it's routine for them. There must be provision given for escalation of non-routine serious complaints. So what happens? Can they talk to a supervisor or a manager? And there must also be internal follow-ups. So once a complaint has been made, there must be certain follow-ups to ensure that that complaint was dealt with sufficiently. So when you look at the internal complaints system, this is through the company themselves. The ombudsman will get involved later if need be, and we'll discuss the ombudsman at the end. But the contact details of the ombud must always be given so that the consumer knows that there is another way if they are not satisfied. So the procedure needs to have the complaints in writing. There must be a receipt of the complaints. It must be acknowledged. We send an email, thank you for your feedback. We will get back to you within 3 days, for example. Once the complaint is received, it needs to be forwarded to the relevant staff member. and that staff member needs to give proper consideration. The client must be informed of the result of the consideration, and if the outcome is not favorable to the client, all reasons must be provided. And the client must also be advised that the complaint can be pursued through the ombuds within 6 months. When you look at the termination of the business arrangement, the FSP must give an immediate request for termination. So if a client would like to terminate, the FSP cannot hold them to the contract for a certain number of times. But you must also ensure that your client understands implications of termination, as there may be some financial implications. If the FSP ceases to operate, it needs to notify all clients and product suppliers and take steps to ensure that outstanding business is completed or transferred even to another FSP. With regards to a waiver of rights, the FSP can't request or induce a client to waive any rights or benefits in terms of this general code, and they also mustn't accept a waiver of rights by a client because a client may not necessarily understand. So it says any waiver of rights by a client is null and void. On top of this general code of conduct, like we said, there are other codes of conduct. So there's a code of conduct for discretionary FSP. They render intermediary services to a client on a discretionary basis. There's a specific code of conduct for hedge fund FSPs that deal with hedge funds only. There's a code of conduct for FSPs conducting short-term deposit taking. This is really banks only, as well as a forex and investment business. So we will not be dealing with those specific codes of conduct in detail, but just be aware that those codes of conduct exist. Finally, the ombud. We dealt with the ombud when we discussed complaints procedures. So if you are not happy with the way the procedure was followed, you can go to the ombud, and the ombud will deal with complaints in a procedurally fair, informal and quick manner, and it looks at the contractual and other relationships between the complainants and the other parties. You can have a look at the rules relating to the ombuds on the Financial Services Board's website.